Critical negotiations between the United States and Iran are underway at this hour in the Middle Eastern nation of Oman. The talks represent what analysts are calling the most significant diplomatic effort in years to prevent a potential military confrontation over Iran's nuclear program. The emergency summit began today, February 6th, in the Omani capital of Muscat. President Trump's senior envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are representing the United States. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is leading the Iranian delegation. The location of these talks changed at the last minute. Iran rejected an earlier proposal to meet in Turkey, insisting instead on Oman and a bilateral format. Iranian officials stated they would only discuss nuclear matters, not broader regional issues. The urgency behind these negotiations stems from Iran's rapidly advancing nuclear capabilities. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran has now enriched uranium to 60% purity. Weapons-grade uranium requires 90% enrichment. Intelligence assessments reviewed by multiple news organizations indicate Iran could produce enough fissile material for 5 nuclear weapons within 1 week. Within 2 weeks, that number rises to 8 potential warheads. These estimates represent a significant acceleration from previous timelines. The current crisis follows direct military action taken last summer. In June 2025, the United States and Israel conducted coordinated airstrikes against 3 major Iranian nuclear facilities. The targets included the underground enrichment site at Fordow, the main facility at Natanz, and the research complex near Esfahan. Satellite imagery analyzed in recent weeks shows Iran has been rebuilding those damaged sites. Commercial satellite companies identified construction activity at Natanz, including what appear to be privacy covers over centrifuge halls. Work has also resumed at a facility called Talagan 2. Military tensions have escalated alongside the nuclear standoff. Last month, an Iranian surveillance drone was shot down near the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group operating in the Gulf of Oman. The Pentagon confirmed the incident but provided limited additional details. Separately, Iranian naval vessels harassed a US-flagged oil tanker transiting the Strait of Hormuz. The confrontation lasted approximately 40 minutes before the Iranian boats withdrew. No shots were fired, but the encounter was described as aggressive. President Trump's approach to Iran has shifted notably in recent weeks. In January, he issued public statements threatening military action with what he called speed and violence if diplomatic efforts failed. Those remarks came during a period of heightened rhetoric from both sides. The decision to pursue direct talks represents a pivot toward diplomacy. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that diplomacy remains the president's first option when dealing with adversaries. She added that Trump would receive a full briefing from his envoys following today's discussions. The composition of the U.S. negotiating team is significant. Steve Witkoff has served as Trump's primary envoy on Middle Eastern issues. Jared Kushner previously played a central role in brokering normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab nations during Trump's first term. Iran has made clear its position entering these talks. Foreign Minister Araghchi stated that any agreement must focus exclusively on nuclear limitations and sanctions relief. Iran refuses to discuss its ballistic missile program or its support for regional proxy groups. The United States has broader objectives. American officials want any deal to address not only uranium enrichment but also Iran's development of advanced centrifuges, its missile capabilities, and what Washington describes as destabilizing activities across the Middle East. One detail receiving less scrutiny is the timeline Iran is working under. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei reportedly authorized research into miniaturized warhead designs in October 2025. This suggests Iran may be positioning itself to weaponize nuclear material if diplomatic efforts collapse. The choice of Oman as the venue is also strategic. Oman has historically served as a neutral ground for U.S.-Iran communications. The country hosted secret preliminary talks that eventually led to the 2015 nuclear agreement, which the United States later withdrew from in 2018. That earlier deal, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, placed strict limits on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. After the U.S. withdrawal, Iran gradually began exceeding those limits. By 2019, Iran was openly violating enrichment caps. Current stockpiles of enriched uranium are estimated at more than 40 times the amount permitted under the original agreement. Iran has also installed advanced centrifuge models that can enrich uranium far more quickly than older equipment. The stakes of these negotiations extend beyond the nuclear issue. A breakdown in talks could lead to renewed threats of military action. Israel has stated repeatedly that it will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons and has conducted covert operations to slow the program. Regional allies are watching closely. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other Gulf states have expressed concern about both Iran's nuclear ambitions and the potential for a wider conflict that could destabilize energy markets and regional security. Energy analysts note that any military confrontation involving Iran could disrupt oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, through which approximately 1/5 of global oil supply passes daily. Such a scenario would have immediate effects on global markets. There is also a domestic political dimension in both countries. In the United States, any agreement would face scrutiny from members of Congress who opposed the previous nuclear deal. In Iran, hardline factions have criticized negotiations with Washington as futile. The White House has not indicated how long these talks are expected to last or whether additional rounds will be scheduled. Officials described today's session as an initial exchange of positions rather than a formal negotiation of terms. Analysts caution that even if progress is made, translating any understanding into a formal agreement would require months of detailed technical discussions. Verification mechanisms and enforcement provisions were among the most contentious elements of the previous deal. The outcome of today's talks in Oman could determine whether the United States and Iran move toward a diplomatic resolution or continue on a trajectory that multiple officials have described as leading toward confrontation. Further updates are expected as the discussions continue.